In a world where science and magic were inseparable, and illnesses seemed to be the whim of gods or evil spirits, a great art was born, the art of healing. This is a story about people who believed in the power of nature, rituals, and their own touch, striving to alleviate suffering and restore harmony. For ancient man, illness was not just a set of symptoms, it was a violation of balance, a violation of harmony with the surrounding world, with invisible forces, with one's own internal state. This is where such a deep, almost mystical attitude to illnesses came from. They could be a punishment from the gods for misdeeds, the tricks of evil spirits, or the result of the impact of negative energy. Each culture, be it tribes of primitive hunters, the majestic civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia, or the refined societies of Greece and India, sought answers to questions of health and illness in its own way. In that distant past, there was no division between the physical and the spiritual in the sense that we understand it today. Body, mind, and soul were one, an inseparable continuum. If the body was sick, it meant that something was wrong with the soul or spirit, and vice versa. So ancient healers did not simply give herbs or apply bandages. They addressed the person as a whole, trying to restore his connection with the cosmos, with the ancestors, with the divine. Who were these mysterious healers? Their roles were varied and intertwined with various aspects of society. They could be shamans who traveled between worlds, communicating with the spirits of ancestors and nature to find out the cause of illness and the method of healing. They could be priests serving in temples, where each god could be the patron of a certain type of healing, and rituals and prayers were considered as important as any other means. There were healers and sorcerers deeply knowledgeable about the properties of plants and herbs, passing on their knowledge from generation to generation. And, of course, the first doctors, who even then began to systematize their observations, study anatomy, although their ideas about the human body were often quite naive by modern standards. The timber between ancient healers and modern doctors was their dual nature. They were both scientists and mystics. Their science was based on centuries of observation and empirical experience. Which herb helps with fever? Which with pain? How to mend a broken bone? But this science was inextricably linked with faith in the invisible. It was believed that healing was impossible without the blessing of the gods, without exorcising evil spirits, without restoring energy or magical balance. Therefore, each of their methods, be it a poultice of herbs or the laying on of hands, was accompanied by prayers, spells, rituals. The purpose of our journey is not to give medical advice, but to immerse ourselves in this unique worldview, methods, and atmosphere of ancient healing. We will try to find points of contact between what we now call magic and what can be called science of that time. We will listen to the whisper of the wind in ancient temples of healing, smell the herbs collected by the light of the moon, and imagine the touch of healers who brought hope to a world full of unknown dangers. Our goal is to create a sense of peace and contemplation, immersing you in the past where every step towards health was a sacred act. Allow yourself to relax and imagine yourself a part of this ancient, mysterious world. At the very beginning of time, before cities and writing, man learned from the greatest teacher, nature. Nature was his first pharmacy, his first laboratory, his first book of knowledge. Observing the world around him, watching animals that instinctively sought out certain herbs when they were sick, our distant ancestors began to comprehend the secrets of healing. It was a slow, painstaking knowledge, based on trial and error, on keen intuition, and on a deep, almost intimate connection with the world around. Every plant in the forest, in the field, by the river, had its own unique power. Some herbs could soothe pain, others could stop bleeding, others could reduce fever, and others could give a deep, restorative sleep. Ancient people learned to recognize these properties, often without understanding the chemical processes, but clearly seeing the result. They discovered that a decoction of willow bark could relieve headaches and reduce fever, just as we now use aspirin, which, by the way, contains derivatives of substances originally found in willow. They knew that poppy could soothe the most severe pain, plunging a person into a life-saving sleep, although they understood its two-sided nature. Garlic, with its pungent smell, turned out to be a strong antiseptic, able to protect against infections and expel parasites. And chamomile gave calm and helped with digestive problems. Gathering these medicinal plants was not just a mundane task, it was a ritual filled with deep meaning. The ancients believed that each plant had its own spirit, its own soul, and in order for it to share its power, it had to be respected. The herbs were gathered at specific phases of the moon, when their healing properties were believed to be at their peak. This could be the new moon or the full moon, depending on the plant and its purpose. Before gathering, special words, prayers, or thanks were often said, so as not to offend the spirit of the plant and to receive its blessing. After gathering, the herbs were carefully dried in the shade to preserve their power, and then carefully stored in specific places, often in clay vessels or woven baskets, protected from moisture and light. The importance of the place of collection was also enormous. It was believed that plants growing in sacred places, near springs or in places untouched by man, possessed a special, more powerful healing energy. Therefore, a trip for herbs often turned into a whole journey, a pilgrimage, requiring special preparation and purity of intentions. This primitive understanding of the world, there were no strict boundaries between the living and the non-living. A stone, a river, a tree, everything was part of a great animated whole. And plants, as part of this living nature, were especially closely connected with man. They were not just chemical compounds, but friends, helpers, gifts of the great Mother Earth. Understanding this deep, intuitive knowledge, this wisdom of nature, became the first step to the development of all subsequent systems of healing. This whisper of leaves, this rustle of dry grass underfoot, this quiet sound of the forest filled with life, was the first lesson, the first song about health and harmony. In the earliest human societies, when tribes lived in harmony with the wild nature, and the world was filled with invisible forces, the healer often occupied a special place. He was more than just a herbalist. He was a shaman, a guide between the world of the living and the world of spirits. His role was not only to heal the body, but above all to heal the soul, to drive out evil spirits that were believed to bring illness, and to restore balance between man and his environment. The shaman was a mediator. He could travel to other dimensions, communicate with the spirits of animals, plants, ancestors, and even the earth itself. These journeys were made in altered states of consciousness, achieved through monotonous chanting, rhythmic dancing, prolonged fasting, and, sometimes, with the help of psychoactive plants. The drum was the shaman's indispensable tool. Its beat was not just a sound, it was a pulse that led the shaman into a trance and then back, serving as a rhythmic anchor for his soul. Under its quiet but insistent beat, the shaman plunged into the depths of his consciousness to see the invisible roots of illness, be it soul loss, corruption, or the wrath of a spirit that had been offended in some way. Once the cause of the illness was discovered, the shaman would begin the treatment, which was also often ritualistic. This could be singing to drive out an evil spirit, symbolically returning a lost soul, or offerings to the spirits to appease them. The healing ritual could last for hours, filled with movement, sounds, the smell of herbs and smoke, creating a powerful sense of sacrament for the patient and the entire tribe. Shamanic healing was based on a deep understanding of animism, the belief that everything around is animated. Every tree, every rock, every stream, every animal has its own soul or spirit. Disease in this paradigm was perceived as a violation of balance with this living nature. For example, if a hunter showed disrespect to the spirit of the animal he killed, he could get sick. The task of the shaman was to restore this disturbed balance, reconcile man with the spirits, and restore harmony. To achieve altered states of consciousness, shamans often used so-called helper plants. These were plants containing psychoactive substances that allowed the shaman to expand the boundaries of perception and get in touch with the invisible world. It is important to note that the use of these plants was strictly ritualized and controlled. It was far from ordinary consumption. Shamans had deep knowledge of the dosage and preparation of these plants in order to use their power for good, for diagnosis and healing, and not for causing harm. Thus, the shaman was not just a doctor, but also a spiritual leader, psychologist, keeper of the traditions and knowledge of his people. His healing was inseparable from a worldview in which everything was interconnected, and harmony with the world was the key to health and well-being. Listen to the quiet beat of a drum, singing, the sounds of a night forest where fire flickers, and imagine how light smoke carries the shaman's requests into the sky, healing and protecting. From the primeval forests and steppes where shamans reigned, we are transported to the sun-drenched valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the cradle of one of the most ancient civilizations, Mesopotamia. Here, in the cities of Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria, were born not only the first laws and the wheel, but also some of the earliest written evidence of medicine. Mesopotamian medicine was a complex amalgam of empirical observations, beliefs in demons, and divine intervention, all recorded on clay tablets. In Mesopotamian society, there were two main types of healers who often worked side by side, complementing each other. there were the Asipu, the exorcists, whose main task was to drive out evil spirits that were believed to be the cause of illness. They used complex rituals, amulets, and, of course, powerful spells to coax or force the demon to leave the patient's body. And there were the Asu, the doctor's healers, who used more practical methods: herbs, ointments, bandages, simple surgical interventions. Their knowledge was based on observing symptoms and the effect of various potions. Illness was often the result of sin, breaking a taboo, or someone's evil witchcraft. And only the joint work of the Asipu and Asu could ensure a complete cure. One of the most amazing practices of Mesopotamian healers was liver divination. It was believed that the liver of an animal, usually a sheep, reflected the state of a person's soul and body, and also predicted the future and indicated the cause of illness. Trained priests-diviners carefully studied the shape, color, texture, and location of marks on the liver, interpreting every nuance. It was a kind of ancient diagnostic method that was also a prediction. Thousands of records with descriptions of the liver and their interpretations have been preserved on clay tablets, testifying to the depth of this art. Mesopotamian physicians used a wide range of medicines. Their sources were varied: plants, such as dates, onions, garlic, myrrh; minerals, such as salt, alum, sulfur; and animal products, such as fat, milk, honey. Medicines were most often taken internally as decoctions, infusions, or pills, and applied externally as ointments or poultices. Some tablets contain detailed recipes that specified the ingredients, their proportions, and the method of preparation. These recipes were a veritable treasure trove of knowledge, passed down from generation to generation. One should not forget about the influence of astrology on medicine. The Mesopotamians were skilled astronomers and believed that celestial bodies, planets, and stars had a direct impact on human health and the course of diseases. Certain days or phases of the moon were considered favorable or unfavorable for the beginning of treatment. Planets were associated with certain organs or diseases, and their position in the sky could indicate the cause of the disease or the best time to perform a healing ritual. Imagine the silence of an ancient library, where thousands of clay tablets covered in cuneiform stand on the shelves. The soft rustle as a priest or healer picks one up to read a diagnosis or prescription. Perhaps the shining disk of the moon, which they believed influenced destinies and health, is visible outside the window. In this world, where magic and science were so closely intertwined, each healing was not just an act of healing, but also a sacred interaction with the cosmos. From the dusty plains of Mesopotamia, we are transported to the banks of the mighty Nile, to ancient Egypt, a civilization where the art of healing reached astonishing heights, mixing deep empirical knowledge with an unshakable faith in the gods and the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that health was a gift from the gods, and illness was a violation of the divine order, often associated with demons or evil spirits. The heart of Egyptian medicine was the temples of healing, dedicated to deities such as Sekhmet, the lioness goddess who could both send and cure illness; Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and magic, patron of physicians; and, of course, Imhotep, the deified architect and vizier of Pharaoh Djoser, who later came to be revered as the god of medicine. People came to these temples to seek healing, making offerings and offering prayers. It was believed that during sleep spent within the temple walls, the deity could appear and reveal the cause of the illness or the cure. This method, known as incubation, was widely practiced and brought hope to thousands of sufferers. We are very lucky that unique written sources have survived to this day, revealing the secrets of Egyptian medicine. Two of the most famous are the Ebers Papyrus and the Edwin Smith Papyrus. The Ebers Papyrus, dating back to about 1550 BC, contains more than 800 recipes for various medicines, descriptions of the symptoms of many diseases, as well as magic spells and incantations for exorcising evil spirits. This is a real medical reference book of antiquity. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, presumably created around 1600 BC, focuses on surgery and traumatology. It describes 48 cases of injuries and fractures, their diagnosis, treatment, and prognosis. This papyrus surprises with its rationality and the absence of magical elements, which indicates the development of empirical medicine. The Egyptians were pioneers in the specialization of doctors. Even then, there were doctors who dealt only with the eyes, teeth, or internal organs. For example, there was a shepherd of the anus, a doctor who specialized in proctology. This speaks of a high level of organization and detail of medical knowledge. The practice of embalming the dead, although a religious ritual, gave the Egyptians a deep, if not always systematized, knowledge of anatomy. By removing internal organs, they observed their location and structure. Of course, their ideas about the functions of organs may have differed from ours, but the very fact of regular contact with the human body significantly advanced their understanding of its structure. The timber of Egyptian medicine was a fascinating mix of practical skills, religious beliefs, and magical practices. It showed a deep respect for the body and a desire to preserve it in this life and the afterlife. Imagine the silence of an Egyptian temple, with only the sounds of the Nile beyond the walls, the soft chanting of priests, and the faint scent of incense. Look at the hieroglyphs that cover the walls. Each one holds a piece of ancient wisdom, a clue to how the Egyptians tried to heal their fellows. Traveling from the Nile Valley, we arrive on the shores of Hellas in ancient Greece, the land where philosophy flourished and where the foundations of what we today call rational medicine were laid. However, it is important to remember that even here, in the midst of logic and reason, the Greeks did not reject the role of the gods and sacred temples in the healing process. At the center of early Greek healing was the cult of Asclepius, the god of medicine. Asclepions, special temples that served not only as places of worship, but also as actual hospitals, were built all over Greece. People suffering from illnesses came here in search of help. They underwent purification rituals, made offerings to the god, and spent the night in the temple porticos, waiting for a prophetic dream, a process called incubation. It was believed that in a dream, Asclepius himself, often appearing in the form of a snake, or his sacred animals such as dogs, could appear to the patient and indicate the cause of the disease or the method of healing. In the morning, priests interpreted dreams and prescribed treatment, which could include diet, exercise, water treatments, or the use of herbs. The snake wrapped around a staff remains one of the most recognizable symbols of medicine to this day, recalling the connection with Asclepius. However, alongside this deeply religious approach, a more empirical view of medicine was also beginning to emerge in Greece. The most prominent figure of this period is undoubtedly Hippocrates, who lived in the 5th and 4th centuries BCE. He is often called the father of medicine for his innovative approach. Hippocrates and his school sought to separate medicine from religion and magic, basing diagnosis and treatment on careful observation of the patient, his symptoms, diet, and lifestyle. Hippocrates is credited with creating the physician's code of ethics, which underlies the famous Hippocratic Oath, the principles of do no harm, confidentiality, and professional responsibility. One of the cornerstones of Hippocratic medicine was the theory of the 4 humors or fluids of the body: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Human health was thought to depend on the balance of these fluids. Disruption of the balance led to illness, and the physician's job was to restore it, for example, through diet, exercise, or in extreme cases, bloodletting or purification. Greek physicians placed great emphasis on lifestyle to maintain health. They emphasized proper nutrition, regular exercise, and the use of clean air and water. For them, medicine was not only the treatment of disease, but also the art of maintaining harmony of body and spirit throughout life. Greek philosophy also had a profound influence on medicine. Thinkers such as Plato and Aristotle reflected on the relationship between the soul and body, the role of the mind in maintaining health, and the human being's place in the cosmos. These ideas shaped a more holistic understanding of the human being, where healing the body could not be separated from caring for the soul. Imagine the rustling of olive groves under the gentle Greek sun, the sounds of fountains in quiet Asclepians where the sick waited for their healing. Feel the atmosphere of philosophical conversations in the Athenian Academy, where the minds of that time discussed the secrets of the human body and mind. And hear the silence of libraries, where observations and knowledge were painstakingly recorded, which would form the basis of future European medicine. Crossing the Adriatic Sea, we find ourselves in majestic Rome, the heart of a powerful empire that, while it did not develop a philosophical medical system as extensive as Greece, excelled in organization, hygiene, and a practical approach to healthcare. The Romans were pragmatists, and their approach to medicine reflected this trait. They valued what worked, especially in the context of constant warfare and the growth of large cities. It was in Rome that one of the most advanced systems of military medicine of its time emerged. The legions were vital to the empire, and their health was a priority. Veletudinaria, the prototypes of military hospitals, were created to care for wounded soldiers. These institutions were distinguished by their well-thought-out organization, separate wards for different types of injuries, a high level of cleanliness, and the presence of qualified personnel who could perform simple operations and care for the wounded. This was a significant step forward compared to previous eras, and laid the foundation for future hospital systems. The Romans also made huge contributions to public health and hygiene, which were vital to maintaining health in densely populated cities. Their engineering achievements, such as the famous aqueducts, provided cities with clean drinking water which significantly reduced the spread of many diseases. An advanced sewage system carried away waste, preventing epidemics. Roman baths, thermae, were not just places to wash, but entire complexes for relaxation, socialization, and health maintenance, including steam rooms, pools with cold and hot water, gymnasiums, and massage rooms. This was evidence of how much the Romans valued physical well-being and cleanliness. While Rome did not have its own distinct medical school, it actively adopted and integrated Greek knowledge. Many Greek physicians migrated to Rome, bringing with them a wealth of experience and theories. Among them was Galen, who lived in the 2nd century AD. He was one of the most influential physicians of his time, whose works formed the basis of European medicine for the next 1500 years. Galen performed dissections of animals, and sometimes humans, which was rare, and made important discoveries in anatomy and physiology, although some of his conclusions, without full access to human bodies, turned out to be erroneous. His voluminous works served as a bridge, transmitting ancient Greek medical knowledge to future generations. In Rome, the concept of a personal physician also developed. Wealthy families had their own physicians, who looked after the health of all members of the household. This was the beginning of private medical practice, distinct from temple medicine or state services. Imagine mighty aqueducts carrying water to the city, bustling thermal baths where people recuperated, and the quiet of a hospital where a military doctor carefully dressed wounds. The Romans, with their practicality and organizational skills, showed that public health was not only a matter of the gods, but also the result of well-thought-out infrastructure and discipline. From the ancient West, we move to the East, to ancient China, the cradle of one of the oldest and most continuous medical traditions in the world. Traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, is inextricably linked with a deep philosophy that sees man not as a set of separate organs, but as a microcosm closely connected to the macrocosm, the universe. Health, according to Chinese ideas, is not just the absence of disease, but a state of harmony and balance. At the core of TCM is the concept of qi. This is the vital energy or life force that permeates everything from the smallest blade of grass to huge galaxies. In the human body, qi flows through invisible channels called meridians. Each meridian was believed to be associated with a specific organ or function of the body. If the flow of qi is unimpeded and balanced, a person is healthy. If the flow of qi is disrupted, blocked, too weak, or too strong, disease occurs. Another fundamental principle of TCM is the theory of yin and yang. These are two opposite but complementary forces that are in constant motion and interaction. Yin is associated with darkness, the feminine, cold, passivity. Yang is associated with light, the masculine, warmth, activity. Health is the perfect balance between yin and yang within the body. If one of these forces dominates or weakens, disharmony occurs, leading to illness. The healer's task is to restore this delicate balance. The timber of ICM is acupuncture. This method involves inserting very fine needles into specific points on the meridians. These points were believed to be the gates to qi. By influencing them, the healer can regulate the flow of energy, remove blockages, strengthen weak flows, or dissipate excess. Although modern science offers its own explanations for the effectiveness of acupuncture, for example, through the effect on the nervous system or the release of endorphins, in ancient China was a deeply philosophical and empirical knowledge passed down for centuries. In addition to acupuncture, herbal medicine and diet were of great importance in TCM. Chinese herbalists had extensive knowledge of the properties of thousands of plants, minerals, and animal products. They created complex recipes, often including several dozen components, to effect different aspects of the disease and restore the balance of qi and yin-yang. Food was also considered medicine, and proper nutrition, appropriate to the person's constitution and the season, was key to maintaining health. A unique diagnostic method in TCM was pulse diagnostics. An experienced doctor could determine the condition of internal organs, the balance of qi, and even predict the development of a disease by feeling the pulse at 3 different points on the wrist and evaluating its various characteristics: depth, strength, speed. This required many years of practice and subtle sensitivity. Imagine the calm sounds of an oriental flute, the sound of water in a Zen garden, the silence that accompanies a tea ceremony. In this world where every point on the body, every breath, and every plant had its role in the great dance of qi and yin-yang, healing was not just treating symptoms, but returning to inner harmony, to the rhythm of the universe itself. From ancient China, we move to the Indian subcontinent, where Ayurveda, one of the oldest and most comprehensive healing systems in the world, was born thousands of years ago. The word Ayurveda literally translates as the science of life, or the knowledge of longevity. And it is not just medicine, but an entire philosophy that views man as a single entity of body, mind, and spirit, striving for harmony with nature and the cosmos. Ayurveda is based on the concept of the 3 doshas: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. These doshas represent the basic life energies, or biological principles, that govern all physiological and psychological functions in the body. Vata is associated with movement, air, and space. Pitta with transformation, fire and water. Kapha with structure, earth and water. Health, according to Ayurveda, is a state when these 3 doshas are in a unique, individual balance for each person. When this balance is disturbed due to poor diet, stress, lifestyle, or external factors, disease occurs. An Ayurvedic healer begins treatment by determining a person's individual constitution, prakriti, and the current dosha imbalance, vikriti. Ayurvedic treatment is always individualized and is aimed at restoring this balance. One of the main methods is the cleansing procedures known as panchakarma. This is a whole complex of therapies, including oil massages, herbal baths, cleansing procedures, and other methods designed to remove toxins from the body and restore the normal flow of energy. These procedures, although time-consuming, deeply cleanse the body and mind, preparing them for further healing. Yoga and meditation are an integral part of Ayurveda. They are not considered just as physical exercises, but as powerful tools for maintaining physical and mental health. Yoga helps improve flexibility, strength, and circulation, while meditation calms the mind, reduces stress, and develops awareness. These practices promote harmony between the body and mind, which is critical for health. Diet and spices play a central role in the Ayurvedic approach. Food is seen as medicine, and proper nutrition that matches a person's individual constitution and current dosha imbalance is key. Ayurveda describes in detail the properties of thousands of herbs and spices, their effects on the doshas and organs. For example, turmeric is considered a powerful anti-inflammatory, ginger is a digestive stimulant, and basil is an adaptogen. The healer prescribes not only the herbs themselves, but also recommends how to combine them and how to use them in everyday cooking. The timber of monastery gardens, which were much more than just vegetable gardens. These were real apothecary gardens, where monks and nuns diligently grew hundreds of types of medicinal herbs. Each plant had its own purpose, from the soothing lily of the valley to the antiseptic sage. Knowledge of the properties of herbs was passed down from generation to generation, recorded in herbals, and used to treat both the monastery inhabitants themselves and those in need who came from outside. Often, small monastery pharmacies were created at the monasteries, where decoctions, ointments, and tinctures were prepared. The monks were also the leading copyists of their time. In the quiet of their scriptoria, they painstakingly copied and preserved not only religious texts, but also many ancient manuscripts, including the works of Hippocrates, Galen, and other ancient physicians. Without this dedicated work, a vast amount of medical knowledge from Greece and Rome would have been lost to the West forever. Thanks to their efforts, this knowledge was gradually brought back into circulation, albeit interpreted through the prism of a Christian worldview. One of the dominant treatments in the Middle Ages, based on the ancient theory of humors, was bloodletting. Diseases were thought to be caused by an excess of bad blood or an imbalance of the four humors. Bloodletting, whether by incisions or leeches, was supposed to draw out harmful substances from the body and restore balance. This method was so common that it was practiced even without a specific indication, and sometimes it did more harm than good. But at the time, it was considered a legitimate and effective treatment. In parallel with monastic medicine, in the villages and among the common people, there were folk healers and witch doctors. They had extensive knowledge of local herbs, spells, rituals, and methods of treatment, passed on orally. Often their methods were combined with superstitions and local beliefs, but their role in helping ordinary people was irreplaceable. The Middle Ages were also a time of devastating epidemics, such as the Black Death or bubonic plague, which claimed millions of lives. These catastrophes, which could not be explained scientifically at the time, greatly influenced ideas about disease. They were often perceived as divine punishment or manifestations of evil forces. This generated fear, but also stimulated the search for new methods of treatment, although they were often unsuccessful in the face of such a global threat. Imagine the silence of the monastery walls, where the only sounds are the rustling of pages as a monk copies an ancient manuscript, or the sound of raindrops outside the cell window. Smell the dried herbs hanging in the monastery pharmacy. Medieval Europe, with its faith and humility, played a decisive role in preserving the medical heritage and preparing the ground for future discoveries. Leaving the medieval monasteries of Europe, we make an intellectual transition to the East, to the brilliant Arab world, which in the Middle Ages experienced its golden age. While Europe was going through a period of decline in knowledge after the fall of Rome, the Islamic caliphates became the beacon of science and culture, actively preserving, translating, and greatly increasing the medical knowledge of ancient Greece, India, and Persia. Arab scholars and physicians were not only diligent translators of the classic works of Hippocrates, Galen, and others. They critically examined these texts, corrected errors, and added new knowledge based on their own observations and experiments. Thanks to their efforts, thousands of manuscripts were translated that might otherwise have been lost forever. It was in the Arab world that the first real hospitals, known as Bimaristans, emerged. These institutions were revolutionary for their time. They were intended not only for treatment, but also for the education of students and research. Bimaristans had separate wards for different types of patients, which allowed for better care of patients and prevented the spread of infections. Hospitals had pharmacies where medicines were prepared and libraries where medical texts were stored. Patients received free treatment regardless of their status or religion, which was unprecedented for that era. The Arab world has produced several outstanding physicians whose names have become legendary. One of them was Abu Bakr Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi, known in the West as Rhazes. He was an encyclopedist, the author of more than 200 medical works, and is considered one of the first to systematically describe smallpox and measles, as well as to propose the use of cotton as a bandage. His works on physician ethics emphasize the importance of patient care. But perhaps the most influential figure was Abu Ali ibn Sina, known as Avicenna. His monumental work, The Canon of Medicine, became a reference book for physicians in both the East and West for nearly 700 years. This 5-volume treatise covered all aspects of medicine: anatomy, physiology, diagnostics, pharmacology, surgery. Avicenna systematized knowledge, proposed new concepts and methods of treatment, and his works laid the foundation for the development of modern medicine. Arab scientists also made significant advances in pharmacology. They created new forms of medicine, such as syrups and pills, and used distillation and sublimation processes to obtain purer and more potent substances. Their pharmacies contained a wide range of plant, animal, and mineral medicines, as well as complex chemical compounds. In addition, Arab surgeons made significant progress using opium and belladonna anesthesia to perform complex surgeries such as cataract removal, hernia repair, and even some types of neurosurgery. Imagine the sounds of Oriental music, the murmur of a fountain in the quiet courtyard of a madrasa where students learn the secrets of medicine. Feel the smell of spices and incense coming from a pharmacy, and imagine the whispers in a vast library where thousands of scrolls are stored. The Arab world not only preserved ancient knowledge, but also raised medicine to new heights, paving the way for its future development. From the brilliant centers of Arabic science, we look east to ancient Persia, the land where the great Achaemenid and later Sassanid empires developed their unique medical traditions. Persian medicine was a rich fusion of its own beliefs, especially the influence of Zoroastrianism, as well as borrowings and integrations from Greek and Indian medicine. This synthesis created a profound and multifaceted system of healing. The central place of medical training and practice in Persia was the famous Gundishapur Academy. Founded in the 3rd century AD, it became one of the greatest intellectual centers of its time, attracting scientists and doctors from all over the world, from Greece, India, Rome. In Gundishapur, medical texts were translated from Greek, Syriac, Sanskrit. Discussions were held and research was conducted. This academy was a real melting pot of knowledge, where different medical traditions enriched each other. Zoroastrianism, the ancient monotheistic religion of Persia, had a significant influence on Persian medicine. It was based on the opposition between the forces of good, Ahura Mazda, and evil, Angra Mainyu. Disease was often perceived as a manifestation of evil, as a result of impurity or sin. Accordingly, cleanliness, both physical and spiritual, was considered the basis of health. Rituals of purification, proper nutrition, and ethical behavior were not just religious prescriptions, but also part of preventive medicine. Healers could use prayers and rituals to combat evil spirits that cause diseases. Persian healers had extensive knowledge of the herbs and minerals that grew in the rich Persian soil. They skillfully used a variety of plants to make medicines, from painkillers to anti-inflammatory and digestive remedies. Minerals such as antimony and gypsum also found medicinal uses. This deep understanding of the local flora and geology allowed them to create effective remedies based on natural resources. In diagnostics, Persian doctors paid great attention to the examination of urine and pulse, developing methods that would later become important in medieval European and Arabic medicine. An experienced doctor could determine the condition of internal organs, identify imbalances, and make a diagnosis by the color, smell, and sediment of urine, as well as by the nature of the pulse. The timbre of Persian physicians often served at the courts of rulers, enjoying high status and respect. Their knowledge was valued, and they were trusted with the health of the highest-ranking officials. This contributed to the development of medicine, as the courts created conditions for research and exchange of experience. Imagine the sounds of Persian music drifting from the rose-scented palace gardens. Imagine the rustle of silk as the court physician bends over his patient, feeling his pulse. Ancient Persia, with its rich culture and deep spiritual traditions, made its unique contribution to the world's treasury of medical knowledge, demonstrating how faith and empiricism can coexist harmoniously in the art of healing. As we delve deeper into the history of ancient healing, we discover a universal element that has always played a central role in maintaining health and banishing disease: water. For our ancestors, water was more than just a liquid. It was a source of life, a symbol of purification, and a powerful means of healing, both physical and spiritual. Many cultures had sacred springs and wells that were revered as places of special power. People believed in the healing power of the water flowing from these springs, ascribing to it the ability to cure a variety of ailments. Pilgrimages to such places were common. Sufferers came here to drink this water, wash their sick parts of the body with it, or even completely immerse themselves in it, hoping for a miraculous healing. According to beliefs, water from such springs could be filled with the energy of gods, spirits of nature, or even the souls of ancestors. In addition to cold springs, thermal waters, hot springs saturated with minerals, were extremely popular. The ancient Greeks and later the Romans actively used them to treat various diseases. Roman baths were not just baths, they were entire complexes where one could not only wash, but also get a massage, do gymnastics, socialize, and recuperate. Warm water, rich in minerals, was considered effective for treating skin diseases, rheumatism, and improving overall well-being. The sounds of murmuring water, steam filling the room, and relaxed voices created an atmosphere of peace and healing. Cleansing rituals associated with water were common throughout the world. Bathing in sacred rivers, such as the Ganges in India or in the sea, was seen not only as an act of physical cleansing, but also as a way to wash away sins and negative energy that was thought to cause illness. In some cultures, water was used to symbolically drive disease out of the body, with the sick person being doused or washed with water to wash away the affliction. Finally, we cannot underestimate the importance of hygiene, which ancient civilizations such as ancient Egypt and Rome began to understand intuitively. The construction of aqueducts to bring clean water to cities, the creation of sewer systems to remove waste. All this was aimed at maintaining cleanliness and preventing the spread of disease. Although the ancients did not know about germs, they empirically understood that the cleanliness of water and the body plays a key role in maintaining health. Imagine the babbling of a brook, the soft singing that accompanies a ritual ablution, or the sound of running water in ancient baths. Water, in its infinite fluidity and purity, was not just an element, but a great healer, giving life, purification, and the possibility of restoration. From the flowing waters, we dive into the depths of the earth, where the eternal witnesses of history are hidden, stones and minerals. For ancient healers, these gifts of the earth were not dead matter. They believed that stones had their own energy, special vibrations, and powerful healing properties. This belief is the basis of many ancient practices that sought to use the power of the earth's depths to maintain health and banish ailments. One of the most common uses of stones was as amulets and talismans. People wore them around their necks, wrists, or hid them in their clothes, believing that certain stones could protect against illness, ward off evil spirits, attract good luck, and, of course, grant health. For example, amber was often used to protect against throat diseases, and jade was used to treat kidney problems. The choice of stone depended on its color, texture, shape, and the mystical properties attributed to it in a given culture. The timber of crystal therapy also found use as medicine. Ancient healers added powders from certain stones to decoctions, ointments, or poultices. For example, malachite, crushed into powder, was used in ancient Egypt to treat eye infections, and lapis lazuli was used as a painkiller. Of course, modern knowledge about the toxicity of some minerals was not available then, but this approach reflects the desire to use all available natural resources. The idea of crystal therapy, The belief that certain crystals can influence the body's energy fields also has its roots in ancient times. Crystals, due to their ideal structure, were believed to be able to accumulate and emit energy that could restore harmony in the body. They could be placed on the body, near a sick person, or used in meditative practices to enhance the flow of life force. Some cultures associated stones with planets and zodiac signs, attributing to them special properties dependent on the celestial bodies. For example, a ruby could be associated with Mars and give vital energy, and a sapphire with Jupiter and bring wisdom and calm. The choice of a stone for healing or protection could be based on a person's astrological chart. Imagine the soft ringing of crystals as a healer moves through his hands, choosing the right one. Feel the coolness and weight of the stones as they are placed on your skin, sensing their ancient, silent power. In this world, where the earth was a living organism, stones and minerals were its veins and bones, carrying deep healing energy, ready to serve man. From the still stones of the earth, we move to the invisible but powerful force of sound and words. In the ancient world, sound was more than just a means of communication. It was considered a vibration that could influence matter, penetrate the soul, and change reality. From the rhythmic beat of a drum to melodic mantras, the healing power of sound and words was a fundamental part of ancient healing practices. Many cultures, especially Eastern traditions such as Ayurveda and Buddhism, as well as early Christianity, made extensive use of mantras and prayers. These sacred formulas, chanted or mentally repeated, were intended to calm the mind, focus energy, and invoke divine powers for healing. It was believed that certain sound vibrations from mantras could harmonize the body's energy centers, reduce stress, and promote deep relaxation, which in turn facilitated healing. Quiet, monotonous chants created a meditative state that allowed the body and mind to regenerate. Songs and lullabies also played an important role. Intuitively, people understood that a gentle voice and rhythmic melody could calm a crying child, relieve pain, or help a sick person fall asleep. Lullabies, full of love and tenderness, were the first medicine a person received in his life. Even without knowledge of neurobiology, the ancients knew that sound can influence emotional states and physiological processes. In Western and some Eastern traditions, there was a belief in the magical power of spells and incantations. It was believed that the right words, spoken with a certain intonation and faith, could drive away illness, drive away evil spirits causing illness, or call upon healing powers. These spells were often rhymed, which made them memorable and gave them a special rhythm and power. It was not just text, but an energetic formula pronounced by a healer. Rhythm and dance were also used in healing practices, especially in shamanic traditions. Rhythmic movements of the body, accompanied by the sounds of drums, rattles, or singing, could lead to trance states. In this altered state of consciousness, the healer or the patient himself could travel to the spirit world, receive revelations, or drive out diseases. Rhythm created a special field in which the body and mind could free themselves from tension and blockages. Imagine soft chanting, soft whispers of incantations, the sounds of meditative instruments gently filling the space. Feel the rhythmic but calm beats of the drums taking you into deep relaxation. In the ancient world, sound and word were powerful tools in the hands of a healer, capable of affecting the deepest levels of the human being, restoring harmony and bringing healing. From the world of sounds and vibrations, we enter a mysterious dimension that opens up to each of us every night, the world of dreams. For ancient people, dreams were much more than just random images. They were considered an important source of information about health, omens, and even direct paths to healing. This was a time when the line between wakefulness and sleep, between the real and the unreal, was much thinner. Many cultures have practiced incubation, sleeping in a sacred place to receive a prophetic dream that might bring healing or point the way to it. We have already discussed the Asclepions of ancient Greece, where sick people would spend the night waiting for the god Asclepius to appear in their dreams. Similar practices existed in ancient Egypt, where people would sleep in temples hoping to receive divine guidance or cure an illness. It was believed that during sleep, a person's soul could leave the body and communicate with gods or spirits, thus receiving valuable instructions. In the morning, priests or healers would help interpret these dreams, turning symbolic images into specific recommendations for treatment. To interpret dream symbols related to illness and health, there were ancient dream books. These were a kind of guide that described in detail the various images that appeared in a dream and their meaning for a person's health. For example, a dream about clean water could foretell recovery, and a dream about dirty water could foretell illness. Dreams about animal attacks could indicate the influence of evil spirits, and dreams about meeting gods could indicate an upcoming healing. These dream books were an important tool for healers, helping them to understand the messages that the subconscious or divine forces sent through dreams. In shamanic traditions, dreams played an even more profound role. A shaman could use dreams as a way to travel into the spirit world to find the cause of his patient's illness or to retrieve his lost soul. These dream journeys were a kind of out-of-body experience in which the shaman interacted with mystical forces, gaining knowledge that was not available in the waking state. Through dreams, he could see the invisible roots of illness and find ways to heal. The timber was often seen in ancient times as messages from gods or ancestors. It was believed that gods could appear in dreams to warn of an impending illness, to point out the cause of an ailment, or even to suggest a specific recipe or ritual for a cure. These dreams were not random. They were part of a larger, interconnected world in which all elements, nature, gods, spirits, and man, were constantly exchanging information. Imagine the sounds of a sleeping city, the mysterious rustling of the night as your consciousness descends into the depths of your subconscious. Feel the quiet murmurs that accompany dreams, and imagine images and messages coming to you in the darkness of the night that could be the key to healing. For the ancients, the world of dreams was as important a reality as the waking world, and many answers to questions about life and health were hidden in it. From the depths of dreams, we come to understand that for ancient healers, illness was rarely a purely physical affliction. It was often seen as a consequence of a disturbance of spiritual or mental balance, as a disharmony of the soul, mind, or spirit. In this world where everything was interconnected, healing the body required above all the restoration of inner peace and harmony. One of the most common causes of illness in ancient beliefs was the influence of evil spirits. It was believed that these invisible entities could inhabit a person's body, causing suffering, or send damage and curses from afar. A healer, be it a shaman, priest, or medicine man, performed exorcism rituals, not to scare, but to symbolically or actually remove this negative entity. These could be special chants, burning incense, using amulets, or casting powerful spells designed to force the spirit to leave the patient's body. These actions created a sense of protection and control over invisible forces. In some cultures, especially those with developed religious systems, illness was seen as a punishment for wrongdoing or sin. In such cases, healing required not only physical treatment, but also repentance, an acknowledgement of guilt, an apology to the gods or the community, and an attempt to make amends. Purification rituals and sacrifices could also be part of this process, helping a person cleanse themselves of sin and restore the gods' favor. Illness was seen as a lesson to be learned for spiritual growth. Often, illness indicated the need for rituals of reconciliation, the restoration of harmony with nature, gods, spirits, or even the community itself. If a person broke a taboo, harmed the environment, or came into conflict with fellow tribesmen, this could, according to ancient beliefs, lead to illness. The healer then acted as a mediator, helping to restore broken connections so that the energy of life could flow freely again. Although ancient healers did not use the term placebo effect, they probably intuitively understood its power. The patient's faith in the healer, in the ritual, in the medicine, was an integral part of the healing process. The confidence and hope that the healer instilled in the patient were themselves of great power, activating the body's internal resources for recovery. The creation of a special atmosphere, the use of symbols and rituals, all this contributed to strengthening this faith and the expectation of a miracle. Imagine the soft whisper of a healer, the soothing sounds that fill the space, and the soft glow of a fire that creates a sense of peace and safety. In this ancient world, where the soul and body were one, healing was not just a treatment for physical ailments, but a profound process of restoring harmony within a person and with the world around him. Moving from internal states to interpersonal connections, we come to one of the key features of ancient healing: the deep relationship between healer and patient. This relationship was built not only on knowledge and methods, but also on sincere trust, empathy, and the integral role of ritual. In ancient times, the healing process was often a shared journey, not just a visit to the doctor. The timbre should be deep, velvety, feel warm, and the pitch should be consistently low, with noticeable fluctuations. The rate should be exactly 100 words per minute, and absolutely even throughout the voiceover, with no speeding up or slowing down. Volume should be very low, about 25% of normal conversational volume, feeling like a quiet but intelligible whisper. Intonation should be natural, very smooth and lulling, with no sudden jumps, rises, or falls. And words should end naturally, with no unnatural tightening of endings. Articulation should be crystal clear and crisp, with each word pronounced legibly, but without excessive harshness or emphasis. The emotional background should be strictly neutral, with a dominant undertone of deep calmness and peace, broadcasting a sense of complete safety and comfort. The overall style should be steady, controlled, completely undramatic, avoiding any manifestations of excitement, tension, sadness, or excessive expressiveness, in order to promote deep relaxation of the listener. Above all, there was a close personal contact between healer and patient. In most ancient societies, healers lived and worked in the same community as their patients. They knew the families, their history, their way of life, their beliefs. This allowed healers to approach each person individually, understanding not only the physical symptoms, but also their possible psychological, social, or spiritual roots. Patients, in turn, deeply trusted their healer, knowing that the healer cared about them, not only as patients, but also as members of their community. Each stage of treatment was often a ritualized process, from preparing to take a medicine to performing certain actions or saying certain words. It all had deep meaning. Rituals created a special atmosphere filled with sacred meaning, which strengthened the patient's faith in healing. They helped the person psychologically prepare for changes, accept the treatment, and actively participate in their recovery. This could be a ritual ablution before visiting a temple, a special prayer before taking a herbal decoction, or a symbolic exorcism of the disease. Storytelling played an important role. Healers often used the myths, legends, and stories of their people to explain the nature of illness, its origins, and the path to healing. These stories were not just entertaining. They provided the patient with a framework for understanding their condition, helped them make sense of what was happening, and placed their illness in a larger cosmic or social narrative. This helped alleviate fear, provide hope, and create a psychological foundation for recovery. Such qualities of a healer as empathy and compassion cannot be underestimated. In a world without developed pharmaceuticals and high-tech equipment, these human qualities became almost the main tools. A kind word, a soothing touch, sincere sympathy. All this helped relieve stress, reduce pain, and strengthen the patient's spirit. The healer was not only a bearer of knowledge, but also a source of support and consolation. And, of course, all this knowledge and practice was passed down from generation to generation through the transfer of knowledge from master to student. This was not just training in technique, but a deep immersion in the worldview, ethics, and spiritual basis of healing. Students lived with their teachers, watching, listening, and practicing to preserve and continue ancient traditions. Imagine the soft, soothing voices, the sounds of caring touches, the gentle crackling of herbs cooking over the fire. Feel the warmth and safety that trust and ritual create. This unique interaction between healer and patient revealed the true power of ancient healing, where faith and humanity were as important as any medicine. We conclude our immersion into the world of ancient healers, returning from the depths of history to our present. Having passed through the millennia, we see that despite the colossal progress of modern science and medicine, many principles and ideas of ancient healing have not only not lost their relevance, but are also once again gaining significance in the 21st century. One of the most striking examples is the holistic approach that was the cornerstone of ancient practices. While modern Western medicine has long focused on treating individual organs and symptoms, today we are increasingly returning to the idea that the human body, mind, and spirit are interconnected and influence each other. Stress, emotions, beliefs, all of these are now proven to have a huge impact on our physical health. This return to understanding the human being as a single system, to the harmony of all its parts, is a direct echo of ancient wisdom. The modern world is also experiencing a resurgence of interest in the power of nature. Herbal medicine, naturopathy, aromatherapy, conscious eating. These approaches, based on the use of natural resources and principles of a natural lifestyle, are once again gaining popularity. We are rediscovering what the ancients intuitively knew. Nature offers us inexhaustible sources of health and well-being. The importance of mental health and its impact on the physical condition is also becoming increasingly obvious. Depression, anxiety, chronic stress. These conditions are recognized as serious factors contributing to the development of many physical ailments. Modern psychotherapy, meditation, yoga, all these practices are aimed at restoring internal balance and harmony of the mind, which, in fact, is a continuation of ancient spiritual and mental healing methods. Even in the conditions of high-tech medicine, ritual and faith still play their role. Remember the sterile operating rooms, the doctor's uniforms, the strict protocol. All this creates a kind of ritual that inspires confidence and calms the patient. And the patient's faith in his doctor, in the effectiveness of treatment, in the possibility of recovery, this is a powerful force capable of activating the body's internal reserves. This is the same placebo effect that ancient healers used, not knowing its scientific name, but perfectly understanding its effect. Ultimately, the human body and mind remain a miracle, despite all the advances of science. And the path to healing will always require not only deep scientific knowledge, but also that elusive component that the ancients called magic, and we today call intuition, empathy, and faith. Let the wisdom of ancient healers bring you peace and harmony. Let their whispers reaching through the centuries remind you of the eternal connection of man with nature, with his inner world, and with the great, incomprehensible mystery of life.